What's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of the Off the Ball podcast on the Nothing But Net Radio on Dash Radio. This is my second show on Nothing But Net Radio, so I'm excited to dive in and talk some hoops today. And on today's show, we're going to talk more about the NBA draft and talk some Charlotte Hornets. Last week on the show, we dove into my big board, picks 1 through 15, my 1 through 15. So we dove into that, talk some Knicks. But on this week, we're going to go 16 through 30. We're going to talk the prospects from 16 to 30, and we're going to talk Hornets. But this week, I have a special guest. All right. Last week I did a solo. This week we're going to go back to the guest. And this is a guy I've had on my show. I've done like I told you guys before. I'm big in the draft. I love drafts. So he's been on a mock draft of mine before. So I'm happy to have him back on the show. My guy Lee from Carolina. Lee, what's going on, my man?
Man, I'm glad to be back, and I'm glad to chop it up and talk some draft banter with you, Chris.
yes, man. We were talking about before on the show, man. We just love drafts, right? We just
can't get enough.
Can't get enough of it, and we're in draft season, right? We're less than 3 weeks away, like. It's coming. It's
actually coming now. It's
right?
actually coming.
It's finally coming. Like we actually like we could see it. It's like a block away, right? It's like right there. Like finally, like we've waited so long, right? So long for this to happen, and we're finally here. So obviously we've waited a long time for this to happen. Obviously March Madness, everything got canceled. So we're going into what 8 months,
yeah.
with everything. Just talk to me about the evaluating prospects and just obviously like you've had so much time to evaluate these guys. At one point, are you like, all right, how much film can I watch of freaking Cole Anthony or this guy and just at this point you're probably just nitpicking, like, all right, he doesn't and like how much of that you're like, are you just all right, I'm set, we're good, I'm just ready for for next month in the draft?
Totally. Well, and I think like you kind of alluded to, with as much time as we've had to evaluate and analyze this draft class, you can kind of get to a point where you start overthinking things for sure. So for me, I will say that coming on this show and then getting to do Rafa's show, it started to kind of force me to start putting some firm numbers by prospects' names, whereas over the last few months, I've just been trying to digest as much information and film as I can, and I had pretty specific ranges for prospects, but now I'm getting down kind of the nitty-gritty as we get a few weeks away to like, all right, you got to really start deciding, who's going to be in your first round, who's going to be in your early second. Because like you've talked about, you're splitting hairs sometimes between 30 and 45. So it does get a little nitpicky. But one thing I will say to kind of finish the answer of the question is, one thing that I've done that I found helpful over the past couple weeks, going back, and like you said, you've almost watched as much film as possible. I've gone back and watched just a few specific matchups. So like Kira Lewis Jr. versus Tyrese Halliburton, Iowa State, Alabama, just to kind of refresh on like seeing, or Jalen Smith and Xavier Tillman, those type of matchups. I've gone back and watched a couple of those
matchups. Those are fun matchups still. Yeah. And have you been able to find guys where you probably weren't actually looking at, and then with all this time be like, oh, now it's like, oh, wow, I didn't know about this guy. Oh, I got to catch up on this guy. Have you been able to do that and find guys try to find those diamond in the roughs?
Absolutely. The best example I can probably give for that is a guy who at best will be a late second round pick, but I went to go watch Oregon State for Trez Tinkle because I had heard some good things about him.
Yeah, you mentioned him on the show last time. Yeah, Trez Tinkle. Yeah, you mentioned.
As I'm watching him, I'm like, who the hell is this Kyler Kelly kid that's blocking 4 shots a game and is 7'1" and can run the floor like a deer? So it's kind of an example of, like you said, you go maybe with the intention of watching a certain player, and then another player pops on the screen to you. And look, man, there are still some, in that 150 to 200 range that I just haven't got a chance to get to and watch a full game film. But, I guess you got to kind of try and focus on the top 80 to 100 and hope that there's not a complete diamond in the rough that you're just missing altogether.
Yeah, I think you're fine if you can't get the film with the 150 to 200. I think you're good with doing, a top 100 or top 120. I think you're fine with that. But are there any other guys where, like you said before, you watching film and someone else catches your eye? Is there anyone else where you were watching, a top prospect and someone else you just watching the game and you're like, oh wow, that guy number 24 is that he's good. Like, who's that guy? I got to watch more of him.
Yeah, so there are definitely quite a few that are players who will be returners that didn't stay in the draft. I've got a ton of those guys that I've got on my radar for next year. But an example I can give you for this class, another example, and of course, everyone knows that Duke has, their three main prospects, Vernon Carey Jr., Cassius Stanley, and Trey Jones. But I really went into the Duke film session focusing on Vernon Carey Jr. and Trey Jones and came away very impressed with Cassius Stanley when I didn't necessarily expect to be as impressed with him as I was.
Yeah, I mean, he's a super athlete. Like he broke Zion. Athlete. He was breaking Zion's numbers at Duke, like all the measurables and all that. Like he's gonna be and I feel like, and I had posted a video. Gilbert Arenas was talking about on his podcast. He was talking about how there's certain guys that are maybe not built for college, but when they go to the pros, like obviously college, it's going to be a slower pace, right? You're going against a whole lot of zone, right? Especially in your ACC, you're going to be playing against that Syracuse, that famous zone.
Less space.
It's less spacing, right? Most likely they're going to teach you to play more of a team-oriented game. As in the NBA, where it's more individual based, and you're going to have most likely you're going to have more space to open. And we see a lot of guys that, and like Devin Booker's and you see Gilgeous-Alexander, and you see guys like that where you're like, I didn't see that in college. And it's like those, I mean, Devin Booker, I think was the 13th, 12th, I think around that range. And we didn't see that essentially in college. And then he takes off in the pros. I don't know about you, but I feel like Cassius Stanley could be that guy. I think he could be one of those guys where I think an R.J. Hampton and Jaden McDaniels, guys like that are, they're physically gifted, right? And Cole Anthony too is another guy. They're gifted. They're skilled. But in college, you didn't see that because, obviously there's so many aspects of, why they didn't, they struggled or they didn't live up to expectations. Do you see that with some of these guys, like with Stanley and guys like that?
Yeah.
Like could they have to pop in the NBA?
I think Stanley's a great example of that. I think McDaniels has the potential to be an example of that. And look, you already saw that a little bit with his brother, and we're going to talk about the Hornets later. But
yes,
he started to pop towards the end of last season for the Hornets. So, yes, I mean, I do see that. And, I think another good example of that in this draft class, a guy we won't talk about tonight because he's in my lottery, and we're covering the back half. I think Patrick Williams from Florida State is very much in that mold.
Yeah.
And look, part of this is sometimes those guys are just so young that once they get a year under their belt in the NBA or 15 months under their belt in the NBA, it's a combination of more space, more transition, and them growing into their development as a player.
Right? Because guys can get better. Like I think people freak out, like especially with like Cole Anthony, like he can't. They just strictly look at his shooting percentage. He shot 38, 39%, and they're like, oh, he's not going to be good. It's like he could get better. Like you can't. Like you get. Like I think it's people get so overworked and like you can't.
Well, I mean, look at Bam. We didn't see any of this.
He's another player, right? No one saw what Bam was doing. Like no one said, all right, this guy's going to be maybe one of the best bigs in the league, right?
Exactly.
Like, no one saw it. Maybe he'd be a nice rotational big, starter, give you some solid minutes, just be a nice, good role player. If anyone said that he was going to be this good, I'm sorry, you're lying because we did not see this at Kentucky. And
I think most people thought he was going to be like a Montrezl Harrell energy type big, and he is that. but he's also like one of the most gifted high post passers we've
It's
seen. And so
yeah.
it's just like, where did that come from?
Exactly,
You know?
right? Yeah, because his passing is phenomenal.
Oh,
Like, he's
it's
one of the best
unbelievable.
passing bigs in the league. So like you can get better. I think feel like like I said, there's so many guys like we just feel like we just like, oh, they can't get better at this, they can't get better at defense. Like Obi Toppin too is another guy like that.
Yeah,
Like yes,
yeah.
obviously he struggles with defense, but he can get better. He can learn, right? We got to be, I feel like I don't really like when people bash the kids. We're talking about, teenage. A lot of these guys are still teenagers, right? Like,
Yep.
so they're still maturing, like, and like,
Totally.
so like they can take, if they're in the right system, they're around the right players, they can get better. And we could see, guys take off like Devin Booker and Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, like,
Yes.
he is the most points off the bench by a rookie of all time. Like it's so
Fred VanVleet. I mean,
undrafted, right? Yeah. And if you look at that Wichita State team, like he was like he ain't gonna be nothing, right? Ron Baker was supposed to be like Clay Anthony early, right?
Yep.
I thought he was gonna be a monster for the Knicks, so right? And then he was out of the league in a couple years, right? Ron Baker, he came back, but Fred VanVleet might get $20 million a year.
He's about to get paid.
He just won a world championship 2 years ago, right? He was a big part of that too. Like no one saw that come. He was undrafted, like 5'11" guy who is not an athlete, and look at he made the most of it. You can get better, right? Especially if you go into the right system. Like he went into the perfect situation, right? And
fit always plays a role for sure. So there's a lot of different variables, and that's why it's a hard thing to do, is project where these players are. But that's also why it's a fun thing to do.
Yeah, it's fun, right? Like we said, like we love projecting and all these guys. That's the whole point of the draft, right? And all these stuff, mock drafts, big boards, projecting stuff, and then people get riled up. That's the fun part of draft Twitter, right? We love that stuff,
Love it.
All right, so I want to get into the big board and 16 through 30. So first, I'll tell you my 16 through 30, and I want you to react and tell me who's too high, who's too low.
Sure.
So I'll shoot first, all right?
Yep.
So, all right. So obviously I did 1 through 15 on last week's show. So starting at 16, I got Grant Riller, followed by Tyrese Maxey. I got R.J. Hampton, Aaron Naismith, Josh Green, Tyrell Terry, Tyler Bay, Paul Reed, Sam Merrill, Patrick Williams, Leandro Bomero, Desmond Bain, Malachi Finn, Jaden McDaniels, followed by Jay Scrub. Who's too high? Who's too low?
Sure. All right. So I have Patrick Williams in my lottery.
Okay.
I think he has some real star upside, but I understand why he might not be in people's lottery, because he just doesn't have the raw production. He only averaged like 9 points a game. He didn't shoot it great from three. So like there are reasons to be skeptical, and I don't think he's necessarily going to be immediate impact, but I think 3 years down the road, we look back and we're like, right. So he's a development prospect, but he's got all the tools in the toolkit to potentially be the guy. So personally, I would say maybe he's a little too low. Okay. Tyrell Terry has been a real tough one for me, because I see the range and I see the effortless shooting off the dribble. I see some defensive instincts, playing passing lanes and things like that that really excite me. But then I also just see this minuscule frame and a little bit of a lack of individual creation and playmaking. So like you and me have talked about off air, this is all very subjective, and sometimes it just comes down to what your flavor is,
Exactly.
But
especially in this draft.
Totally. And especially later in this draft. And so Terry's been one that struggled for me. I love that you've got Paul Reed in the first round.
Paul Reed,
I think he's his offensive toolkit is problematic, to say the least, but in terms of like a unique defensive prospect, he's as good as there is.
He gets after it.
And the one thing I love about him, not only is he a just incredible defensive player, he seems to have a knack to make timely defensive plays, if that makes sense. So he's not just necessarily filling a stat sheet with steals and blocks. he's getting a block when his team's down 3 with 2 minutes left, or
Exactly.
he's getting a steal and a transition dunk to tie the game with 4 minutes left. Like, I just keep noticing Paul Reed making not only great defensive plays, but timely, important defensive plays. And that kind of puts him on another level for me, if that makes sense.
No, I agree. And I'm not saying he's Bam, but he like you said, he makes those plays like Bam does, where he makes those big time plays where you need it at the end. Right? You saw that block, like Jason. I mean, that literally changed the series, right? That's a game changing play. And I feel like with Paul Reed, like he does that kind of stuff. So not saying he's going to be Bam, but it's like kind of that mold defense where he makes just big time plays. So that's why I like Paul Reed a lot.
Is there anybody else in there that just like is one of your kind of mainstay guys that you just love to death? I know we've already mentioned a couple, but
yeah. I had another guy.
I think we both like Flynn a lot.
I like Flynn a lot. I like Flynn. Obviously, I mentioned Sam Merrill. I'm a big Sam Merrill guy. We talked about that before. Big Sam Merrill, Peyton Pritchard. Who was the other guy? Brain fart. I had another guy that I really like. He was Jalen Smith. Jalen Smith too is another guy who's just all over the place. Like he could just, I think he's going to be a tremendous pro. He was my 15th player. That's why I didn't mention. But I love Jalen Smith. I love him.
And Jay Scrubb's an interesting one, man.
Yes.
He's flying up some draft boards. And I mean, you see it with the 6'6" frame and a lefty. He's got a little bit of sauce to his game. He's a pretty decent athlete. Uses the pick and roll well. Just a cerebral offensive player. You can see that in his game. So he's been a tough one for me to exactly figure out where I want to slot him. But you are not the only person that I've seen. Like, he's a high riser right now.
Yeah, I just look at his like I said, his physical traits. How he moves downhill. I think all that can translate to. Obviously, he didn't play. He played at a JUCO, so obviously, we're not seeing him going against, obviously, not even bottom tier D1 town. But to me, I just look at the player, and I feel like if he played at a Power 5 or even a mid major, I think this dude's probably a lottery pick, the top 10 pick. Like, we're talking about him at that level, right? Maybe even higher because he's that physically gifted. So that's why I'm like, I think he does. I think someone's going to take if he does go in the back end of the first round and goes to a Boston or Toronto or one of those teams, the Lakers. You think the Lakers with another athlete like that would? Right. I mean, he could definitely benefit to going to one, bottom first round and going to a really, really good team for sure. So that's why I've been liking Jay Scrubb a lot. So all right, so shoot with your 16-30.
Yeah, so I think it'd be good. I'll mention just a couple players that are in my lottery that may not be in everyone's lottery, just so people have context of like, wait, where's that guy? So
if you want, you can go with your 1 through 30 if you want. If you feel like you want to, yeah.
That's all right. I'll just mention a couple of them.
Go shoot.
Jalen Smith is one of my guys that's actually in my lottery. I'm incredibly high on him. You don't have a lot of prospects that have the rare combination of floor stretching ability with shooting and rim protection on the other end. That's a rare pairing, and when you find that, you should highly value it, in my opinion. So,
in the pick and roll, he's not going to be one of those guys that's going to get blown by like a lot of the bigs. Like we see,
he can move.
He can move, so you're not going to have to worry about that. So that's obviously they love that in the league today. So,
and I think he'll actually even get better. Like, I think he still has more development from like the body control and all that. Exactly, I think that'll get better. So he's in my lottery. Sadiq Bey is in my lottery.
Oh, I love Sadiq. I love Sadiq Bey.
Sadiq Bey.
Yeah,
I think Portland would love if he slides to 16 because they really need that kind of prototypical
perfect fit.
3-and-D.
I had mentioned this before. I talked to someone. I'm like, yo, Portland, Sadiq Bey. I think we may have mentioned it on the draft show. I believe so. I think that's where you mentioned it, and to me, that is if there's a perfect fit for any team, Sadiq Bey in Portland, that's exactly what they need because that was what they were missing. They were missing obviously not having Trevor Ariza, and that was huge, right? They had Melo, but they needed a guy like that who can stretch a little bit. So to me, Sadiq Bey in Portland, that's a perfect fit.
I think they're if I was in Portland, I'd be crossing my fingers that he drops. I don't think he will. I've got him in the lottery. Patrick Williams, Teo Maledon he'd be 15 for me. So
there's a lot of people that's been, I think with Theo, I think people think Frank Ntilikina automatically, right? And I think that's lazy. I think that's very lazy because they're not the same, right? Theo can play.
It's understandable, but it's a mistake.
Yes, agreed. Because Theo can play make a little bit better than Frank. He's not the defender like Frank, but he could be a way better playmaker than Frank is.
He doesn't have the physical frame that Frank does, and he's not the on-ball defender that Frank is, but he is. I mean, as an 18-year-old, he is already ahead of where Frank is in terms of like pick and roll practitioner, vision, shooter off the bounce. Exactly. I'm a sucker for instinctual basketball players, and right or wrong, that's just how I am. And Teo Maledon is an instinctual offensive basketball player, and I really enjoy watching him. So, and then the only other two, which I think are in a lot of people's lotteries, are Kira Lewis Jr. and Aaron Nesmith. So, and then the rest are usual suspects: Wiseman, Edwards, all those guys.
Kira to New York is my dream scenario.
Man, I could see it.
Dream scenario. Like, I have a few guys for the Knicks where I'm like, all right, Vassell. Maybe if I don't think Okoro's going to make it, but if he were there. But to me, Kyra to New York, I think he opens up the offense. We play at more up tempo, because that's to me the Knicks would just play too slow. More up tempo, especially with RJ Barrett, who loves to move in transition. Right, get him more in open space. Get his game going, because when he played last year, it's just. Everything's half court, everything's stopping, and then that's not his game. This game is just going, transition, moving, So I think Kyra would be a home run for him.
I think the Knicks had to ask RJ to create a little too much. He needs somebody on the ball that can create some easy opportunities. So I think you would be right to be excited to get him in New York. But so those are just some of the guys that I've already got on my list, so people have some context. So at 16, I've got Isaac Okoro. I'm obviously just a tiny bit lower on him than probably the consensus is. I do see him in the lottery a lot. It really just comes down to I prefer wings like Bey and Vassell just because they bring some of that two-way. Although, look, Okoro's a little younger. He's a tremendous athlete. He's got defensive versatility. I think if a team like Portland ended up with him, even though they just drafted Nazir Little, Okoro's an upgrade in every way, in my opinion. So I think they'd love to have him there. 17, I've got Cole Anthony, who we spoke about a little bit. I think Minnesota would like to get another playmaker. I think Cole Anthony, there's this argument with him. What his inefficiency, was it because he's an inefficient player, or was it because he played with no space on one of the worst shooting teams North Carolina's had in 2 decades?
They were awful this year. They were awful.
Awful. I mean, there were times where Andrew Platek was the best shooter on the floor with Cole Anthony. And that's just, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. So I'm a little bullish on Cole Anthony. I think I actually think he'll walk into the NBA a little better defender than people realize. He's pretty tenacious. So I like him kind of in that middle half of the first round. I think that's great value if you can get Cole Anthony there. 18 is a guy that may be a little bit of a surprise, Robert Woodard from Mississippi State.
Okay.
So Robert Woodard is certainly a guy that I've probably put a stamp on as like one of my guys that I feel like I'm higher on him than most. To your point, kind of a guy that I noticed as I was going to watch Reggie Perry, and I'm like, who is this cat? I mean, he's 6'7", 230. He's built like a linebacker. He played in an offense at Mississippi State that a lot of mouths to feed. Reggie Perry, Nick Weatherspoon, Tyshawn Carter. Like, he didn't get the ball all that much. He averaged 6 rebounds a game. He averaged a steal and a block a game. He shot 42% from 3. This guy has a little bit more on-ball creation than I think people realize because of who all he played with. I think he's one of those guys, to your point earlier, NBA is going to be a lot better of an environment for him.
I can see that with him.
And he can really defend, obviously. Desmond Bain at 19. I think I think Brooklyn would love to have him, some insurance if they can't bring back Joe Harris, and they just need to surround Kyrie and KD with shooting and defense,
exactly, right? He's perfect. That's another perfect fit, right? We talked about that with Sadiq Bey in Portland. For the Nets to get Desmond Bane, that's a perfect
I think that
fit.
Makes so much sense, right?
Yep, agreed. That's exactly what they need with Kyrie and KD. You know, Kyrie drive into the hole, kick it out to Desmond. You know, same thing with Kevin Durant. I mean, and they're going to need shooters, right? To coming back from injury, both of them come back from injury. That would be that's a home run pick if Brooklyn get that. I hope they don't because I don't want Brooklyn to get any better as a Knicks fan, as a salty Knicks fan. But if there's a good fit, I mean that's a good fit for sure.
In Brooklyn, I think you have to kind of surround the Brooklyn conversation with they may make a blockbuster trade that, even prior to they could package LeVert or Dinwiddie and this pick to try and go get another quote unquote superstar or whatever. So who knows what Brooklyn's going to do, but that would make sense if they keep the pick. At 20, I've got Daniel Oturu, center from Minnesota, sophomore. He is a guy that mixed bags on. I do see some people that are as high as me on him. I also see him in the second round a lot. Oturu, to me, Miami needs to have a developmental big. You saw when Bam was injured in the finals. They're searching. They're searching. Yeah. Myers Leonard, Solomon Hill.
Kelly Olynyk was just getting bullied by
yeah. So they need to have a developmental young big, I think. And Oturu is kind of a unique combination of maturing floor spacer. He shot like 36 or 7% from three this year on average volume. He's got a great post-up game, although the NBA, of course, has moved away from a lot of post-up action. And he can protect the rim a little bit. So I really like Oturu. I would encourage people to go check him out if they haven't dove into him yet. 21, Philadelphia, Malachi Flynn. It feels like a marriage.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's another good fit.
Yes, they have Shake Milton. Maybe Malachi Flynn doesn't start right away, but he's a second unit pro pick and roll operator already. One of the best pick and roll players in this draft. Philadelphia needs as much shooting as they can get, right?
Yes, that's what hurt them last year, right? They lose T.J. McConnell, they lose J.J. Redick. That, to me, that was just as big as losing Jimmy Butler. They had no shooting. They had, everything's, especially when you have Ben Simmons and Embiid, that obviously they're not going to be lighting up from the perimeter. Who they dishing it out when they're driving? They're dishing out to no. Jason Richardson was not that dude this year. He struggled. They don't have those guys. So. Yeah.
They were searching all year and they kind of finally settled on Shake, and I think Shake's a solid player.
He is a solid player.
But if you can get Malachi Flynn at 21 for Philadelphia, I think that would be terrific. 22, I've got this could be honestly probably a little bit of a surprise. A guy I'm a bit higher on the consensus is Nick Richards, the center from Kentucky.
Okay. Big time 5-star recruit. He was a 5-star recruit. Big time player.
Weird college career. Had a really good freshman year. Completely kind of dropped off a cliff as a sophomore. Really didn't even play a ton with PJ and those guys Washington there, and then had a monster junior year.
Yeah.
So and here's the dirty little secret on Nick Richards. He is a above 75% free throw shooter, and he shot 44% on mid-range jumpers.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think people realize that he is kind of slowly maturing into a more adequate floor spacer than I think he gets credit for. And obviously he brings rim protection. He's 7'1", he's lanky, he has good timing, all that stuff. And look, Denver's, Plumlee's probably gone. Paul Millsaps is on an expiring contract. They're going to try and re-sign Jeremy Grant. I think they need one more developmental big to go along with Bol.
Yeah, they would have along with Michael Porter Jr. They would have some definitely talent. And Nick Richards, like you said, highly talented coming out of high school, right? It just developed slower than people think. I think everyone wants everyone to be one and done, develop like this, right? But he just took a little longer than expected. But he definitely, like you said, definitely has improved he improved a lot this year. And he is a first round talent, right? He is a talent. He is a first round talent. So it wouldn't surprise me if he goes first round.
Yeah, we'll see where these guys obviously all end up, but he's certainly and look, admittedly, I'm a little higher on him than most, but I like him a lot. 23, I've got one of your Duke boys. I got Trey Jones
Okay.
at 23. Gosh, man, the more and more I watch Trey Jones, I think he's got the best hands in the draft in terms of
Agreed.
just – I mean, he just takes the ball from people. Like,
Exactly. That's exactly.
just literally – like kind of like Kawhi does. He literally just takes the ball away from the other player. And it's like, okay, we're going to go the other way now.
Exactly.
It obviously intangibles, just an organizer, a leader, one of the best on-ball defenders in this draft class, an improving shot maker.
Yes, he improved so much from freshman year to sophomore year shooting. Like he was.
You got to like that trend, you know.
Exactly.
And I think Utah, you saw in the bubble, they're really depending way too much on Jordan Clarkson in the second unit. He had to create almost all their offense when Donovan Mitchell's out of the game. So to have someone that can just get guys in the right spot, put a little bit of pressure downhill on the rim, I think Trey Jones makes sense.
Yeah. He's going to put everyone in the right spot because, like you said, with Jordan Clarkson, Jordan Clarkson is a scorer, right? He's just one of those guys.
He's wired to score,
but he's not shooting 45. He's going to shoot 39, 40%. He's not going to be a high efficient scorer,
And he's not directing trap.
Exactly. Right. He's just
head down. Let me go get a bucket.
Exactly. And you kind of need that guy to just calm everything down and distribute and know where guys are, put guys in the right spot. So Trey, to me, I love him. I think he's a first round pick for sure too. He's tremendous.
I know that's one of your guys.
That's my guy. I need to see a Duke guy in the first round. I think we got a streak going. I don't know how long, but we got a streak going. Can't end that.
I might have another one coming up here. We'll see.
Yeah, because you had mentioned on the last show, and people were like, "Whoa, okay." So maybe we'll see him go here.
24 is a player, Emmanuel Quickley. I'm incredibly high on Emmanuel Quickley. I have been since the beginning of this process. He's SEC Player of the Year. Yeah. I don't think people realize that he, from a freshman to sophomore campaign, he evolved into one of the best perimeter defenders in the SEC. Mm-hmm. Obviously, he shoots over 90% from free throw line and mid-40s from three.
I think he missed. When I was doing I think he missed like 13 free throws all year. Like it was a crazy.
Basically
number.
Automatic.
He was just lights out from free throws. He was just.
He's got a little bit more. Look, I'm not decrying him as a great offensive creator, but he has a little bit more off the dribble than people think. Yeah. He's a good two-way player. I think he makes sense for Milwaukee, who needs to add shooting and playmaking, and perimeter defense.
Sure.
25, Oklahoma City Thunder. I've got them taking Pokusevski. I'm gonna butcher his name, Alexander.
I think it's Alexander Pokusevski. I think
Pokusevski.
Yeah.
I think Oklahoma City. We'll see what they do with Chris Paul. Of course, they could unload him and completely kind of reset their timeline. I think Gallinari is probably going elsewhere. Mm-hmm. They've got a ton of young talent with SGA and Baisley and kind of just a group. And of course, Steven Adams is still there. Mm-hmm. I think this could be a good fit for Poku because. Here's what I've been saying about Poku. His top end ceiling is worth the risk because the ROI you would get if he actually even reaches 90% of what his ceiling is a pretty special, unique player. Mm-hmm. But the flip side of that is you're not going to see that for 2 to 4 years, in my opinion, at the very least. I just don't think he's going to walk into the NBA as any type of contributor. But I think it's possible that 3 years down the road we're like, man, this guy was a steal.
Especially at this point of the draft, right? If he's going to go in the 20s, you might as well take a shot at him. Or what do you have to lose? You're probably one of these playoff teams like. Let's take a shot because if he's a home run, then we just got the steal of the draft, right? We got maybe a guy who could be an all-star or at least a high-level starter, in this league. So why not take it, especially in the 20s at this point? You do it.
It's a good risk-reward profile.
Exactly,
at that point, right?
Because, like you said, you're one of these playoff teams that you could take a chance on one of these guys. Like if you're Boston for
right.
Like you got 87 first-round picks. You might as well use one of them on Poku and see what happens, right?
Take a shot.
Take a shot. I think it's definitely worth it at this point in the draft.
26, Boston. I've got Peyton Pritchard, a guy that we both like a lot. Obviously, one of the best shooters in this draft, just a complete gamer, a better defender, a better anticipation on the defensive side that I think he gets credit for, and just a better playmaker. I mean, he gets in the lane and he creates easy opportunities for his teammates. And if he can do that at the NBA level, which I think he can, he's going to stick around for a long time. And look, Boston's been playing Wanamaker at their backup point guard.
They got to upgrade. They got to upgrade. Wanamaker was not it. Semi Ojeleye was not it. They got to upgrade for sure. So adding him, and he would fit Boston perfect, man. He just everything about him screams Boston, right? He's just a Boston player, right? Everything about him is Boston, and he'll fit right at it, and he hits big shots too. He hits big shots. He hit big shots for Oregon, so that would be a great fit for Boston.
27, I think, well, who knows? But I think the New York Knicks fans would be pretty happy if Tyrese Maxey
We're never happy. Lee, before you even get going, the Knicks fans are going to boo this pick. They're going to boo virtual boos. They're going to boo the 8th pick. They're going to boo 27. They're going to boo 38. No matter what. They don't even know. They're going to be booing no matter what. So wherever it will be booed.
So obviously it would depend on who they picked earlier, but I've got Tyrese Maxey at 27. I'm a little bit lower on Maxey, of course, than the general consensus. A lot of people do have him in his lottery. Mm-hmm. Ashton Hagen's really organized that team this year and was the keys to driving that offense. I don't think Maxey will be able to do that on the ball right away in the NBA, and of course the shooting kind of depends on if you buy or sell there. So, but look, at 27, you've got to be happy with getting Maxey that late.
Who did you have? Who did you have the Knicks taking at 8? If you have Maxey down here, who did you have the Knicks at 8?
This will be interesting. I'm not sure how you react to this, but on Raphael's pod, I had Obi Toppin to the Knicks.
I love that. I love that. I know. There's like you said, we talked about this before. Like there's like this. People are going crazy over Obi Toppin, right? They just look at the defense. And it's great. I don't know if you saw it, but someone had posted on Twitter, they posted Obi Toppin's, good plays on offense, and then they posted defense, and the defense got, 20,000 views. The offense only got, 100. And it's like people are so focused on, but he can't play defense. He's so stiff. And, yes, he could be tight, especially a guy that's athletic. But just look at the offense and, how good of the offense. I think in New York, like I said, he's a super athlete, right?
Vertical athlete.
Super freak athlete. And to me, that in transition, I think that would be, if the Knicks I know I would be happy if Obi Toppin, because I feel like if we had seen him in March Madness, we see him in the tournament and we had seen, and I'm pretty sure he would have took that step and, he would have carried that Dayton team. They were on a roll, right? That Dayton team was on a roll. They would be a 1 seed. They would have, he was already played a year and all that. I think if people saw him in the tournament do good thing, I don't think people would have the same things. But since everything got canceled, now they just all right, well, what does he do good? And they look at the defense and all that. But if the Knicks get Toppin and then you follow that in the end and get Maxey, now we're not gonna play a lot of defense, but we're gonna score, right? Even Tibbs will figure a way to get.
There's some excitement there. I think
I would be ecstatic if you telling me we come out with Obi Toppin and we come out with Tyrese Maxey, man, that's
not a bad day.
Not a bad day. And then we still got the 38th pick in the second round. We get someone else. To me, that's I'd be happy at this point in the draft.
Well, and I think you're right. I think Toppin would have been a March Madness darling if we could have seen it.
Right.
And look, I understand that the New York Knicks have a million power forwards right now, so I understand.
Not like him, right? He'd be the best one.
and none of those guys are in the long-term plan, so I don't see why it really matters. I mean, obviously there are other solid options at 8-2, but I think Obi Toppin's probably the most polished offensive player, ready-made offensive player in this draft.
His offense is NBA ready right now. You could plug him in and he's gonna get you 15 a game right now. That's my thing. I'm sure you feel that way too. He's just plug and play and let's go.
Well, look, and if you're looking at a 3-4-5 of R.J. Barrett, Obi Toppin, and Mitchell Robinson, you could do worse.
That's athletes right there, right?
Right.
That's us. Right. And you add Maxey right there, coming off the bench. You get some electricity off the bench. Knicks can be going places, right? They got a lot of draft picks. So I would be happy with that.
All right, so 28. I've got Cassius Stanley, a guy that we've already talked about a little bit today, so I won't harp on it too much. But just like you said, a complete outlier athletically. And not only But here's the thing. He's not just an athlete. Like, he uses his athleticism functionally. He doesn't just have a breakaway dunk here or there. Like, he makes tough catches in traffic. He gets put back dunks on offensive rebounds. He runs the floor. He's a better spot up shooter than I think. I think people just assume athlete can't shoot. No, he actually has pretty decent catch and shoot numbers. And that'll improve. And he's a good defensive player, especially for how young he is. So I like Cassius Stanley in the first round at 28.
Upside, too. That's another upside where you're getting someone that late that can possibly be, with the upside, the athleticism and all that could be better in the pros,
Yes, absolutely, like we talked about. And then my last two, 29 and 30, I've got two bigs. I've got Precious Achiuwa going to Toronto at 29. They're losing Ibaka most likely. They're losing Marc Gasol most likely.
Yeah, they're going to need a guy like that.
They've got Chris Boucher, who's a similar type of player, but they're just going to need to throw darts at the dartboard on young bigs to try and develop. And who better to develop Precious than Toronto, right?
Yeah, they'll figure that out. They seem to always figure that stuff like that in Toronto. So I'm sure they'll make him a freaking an all-star somehow.
Right, they seem to always do that.
Exactly.
So, and then my last pick of the first round, I've got Boston taking Vernon Carey Jr. I realize that Vernon Carey Jr. can be looked at a little bit like a VCR in a.
If this was six, like I said, like you tweeted out, and a lot of people Vernon Carey's that fourth guy on the list you had mentioned, but if this was six, like Okafor, Jahlil Okafor, right? If he was around that time, we're talking about Vernon Carey as probably a top 5, top 10 pick, right? Because he's a bull, right? He's 6'10". I mean, his dad was an NFL player. He's just a bull, right? He bullies people in the paint. He's 270.
It's massive.
Today's era is it's crazy, like how he's all over the place and where people have him.
And those criticisms are totally fair, and that's why I'd have him very late in the first round. And look, it's a fit thing to a degree. Boston needs probably to throw, to use that phrase again, to throw one more dart at the dartboard on a young big. They've got Robert Williams. They've got Michael Tice. They probably need one more guy to hope to develop.
I agree. Yeah, they need a big.
And you could make some other picks there, but I like Vernon Carey Jr. I prefer him to the Isaiah Stewarts and the Reggie Perrys. We're splitting hairs probably, but I prefer him. So then I would just say a couple guys that were right there for me.
Yeah,
it would be early second round picks. Skylar Mays, RJ Hampton would just be right outside of my first round.
Okay, so you have I just realized you just had him outside your top 30. Okay,
I do. Yeah, I've got him early second round. I'm not as bought in on RJ. Josh Green is a guy I like, but was just right outside of that. Okay. Xavier Tillman, of course. Jamias Ramsey. And then Paul Reed and Devon Dotson. Those would be my next guys that were right there on the fringe.
Okay. All right. So give me one or two guys that are deep sleepers, like a lot of people aren't talking about them. Give me a few that you really like that you could think could possibly be back at the end second round picks. That most people you're not even hearing about.
Yeah, totally. So one of those guys was Kyler Kelly that I mentioned from Oregon State. Just point blank period, the best shot blocker in this entire draft class. Yeah. Now, the reason why you haven't heard about him as much is because you may ask, what else does he bring to the table? And right now, not a ton. So he's 7'1". He's an incredible athlete. He has instinctual timing on block shots, which is why he's the best shot blocker in the country. But, offensively, he's got a long way to go. So we'll see. But he's a deep sleeper for me. Yam Mater is a deep sleeper for me. And we
talked
about him.
He to me, he's New York City street baller. The handles are tight like that. He plays just like a New York City point guard.
He's a New York City street baller from Israel.
Yeah, it's great. I'm watching. And that day when I posted and we had gone back about that. I'm watching his stuff. I'm like, wow, he's a New York City point guard. He's literally like Sebastian Telfair and all these guys. That's how he plays. It's crazy.
He's up 94 feet. A blur on the ball in terms of driving. Stops on a dime for the mid-range pull-up. And just a pest defensively. I watched some of the Israeli League playoffs, and he was in Denny's grill,
Yeah.
pressuring him full
Oh,
court.
that's the game I was watching. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
because it was kind of blurry, the film. And I'm like, is that Denny that he's getting into? And I'm like, okay, he's getting into Denny. And obviously there's a size difference, but Yam was getting, that's why I'm like the New York City reference. Like he plays defense like a New York City point guard and the all handles and all that. He's New York City point guard to a T.
But I don't think, I think he's a little bit of a sleeper just because obviously he didn't play in the NCAA. People don't know about him as much. So Tyler Kelly and Mater. Tyshawn Alexander is a guy that's starting to get some buzz from Creighton that I like a lot. Just 6'4" shooter, solid athlete, really solid on-ball defender. And then one more I would throw at you would be Jordan Wara from Louisville.
Nwora, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he's a little. I mean, just honestly, to be transparent, he can be a little lazy at times. He lacks a certain passion, almost it seems like at times. But I mean, you're talking about a 6'7" wing that can flat out shoot over 40% from three, has some playmaking ability, a very smooth offensive player. So from a talent standpoint, Wara is maybe a top 35 player in this draft, but I think a lot of people have seen what I've seen. How hard does he try on defense, and what else does he bring to the table? So that'll be interesting to see if he can flip a switch in the NBA or not. I don't know.
We'll see for sure. But yeah, that's those are like the Kyler Kelly. Like you put me onto him. Like I'm like, okay, I gotta watch more of it, and I started to really like his game a lot. But yeah, all right. So we talked about our board 16 to 30. Now I know you're big into with the Hornets. So let's talk a little bit about the Hornets and what they need, their draft, their off season. Obviously, they're one of those teams that they need talent. They just got to find talent. They lost Kemba last off season. At this point, they just got to add talent. They have the third pick. At this, what do you think they're going to be looking at? Obviously, they got P.J. Washington, Malik Monk, Devontae Graham came out of nowhere, was one of the most candidates for most improved. But he's still got to work on efficiency, right? Could score, but efficiency is not there. Miles Bridges. So what do you think that Charlotte's going to be looking at with the third pick?
Yeah, so I think Charlotte has two main specific needs, and then I think they have a third general need. I think, obviously, like you said, definitely plugged in with the Hornets and is probably the team that I cover the most extensively in the NBA. They are in desperate need of rim protection. They offer almost zero resistance at the rim. Cody Zeller is a solid backup center in this league, but he is not a premier rim protector by any means.
No.
PJ Washington is terrific as a rookie as he is. Rim protection is not his forte. No. So I would be shocked if at some point in this draft the Hornets don't look to find a center that brings rim protection, whether that's at 3, that could be at 32, that could even be potentially at 56. But they will take a rim protector, I think, in this draft. The second need is playmaking in the second unit. There was really no true backup to Devontae Graham this year. It was honestly just Terry Rozier when he could play on the ball. And I give Terry Rozier a lot of credit. He willingly slid off the ball when the Hornets realized that Devontae Graham was a true point guard, a true facilitator, a true playmaker. And Rozier had a career year shooting the ball, off the ball. So I give him a lot of credit. At 3, they could go a multitude of ways. I mean, I think conventional knowledge would say they'll take whoever's left over of Wiseman, Edwards, and Paul. But I don't think that's necessarily definitely going to be the case. I can make a case for all 3 of those guys, but I think Denny Advia is an option because, to your point, the Hornets just need to add the best talent they can find at the end of the day. They need to continue to accrue young assets, and they've done a good job of that over the past couple of years with Mitch Kupchak taking over the front office. Ultimately, I would love to see them get Anthony Edwards at 3 because I think he's the best player on this draft board. I don't think that's necessarily realistic. So I would look to Onyeka Okongwu or James Wiseman, whoever is your preference out of those 2. Myself, I would go with Okongwu. But I think they'll also consider Denny as well.
Denny, okay. What is your draft board right now as far as who's going? Like, obviously we got Minnesota #1, Golden State 2. Who do you have going with the first 2 picks, and who will be available for Charlotte at 3?
Yeah, so I've got Anthony Edwards going 1 to Minnesota. Okay. I've got actually a little bit of a surprise on Rafa's pod. I had Tyrese Halliburton going #2 to the Golden State Warriors,
okay.
A player I'm incredibly high on and I think would be a great fit in Golden State, either in their second unit or off the ball with Steph and Clay. And then I had LaMelo Ball going 3 to Charlotte. I think if Ball's there, they will take him. And that's kind of how that top 3 panned out for me, at least thus far.
And it's also a business thing too, right? You kind of need star power, right?
We need some star power.
They could use a star power too to help.
I haven't been overly excited about LaMelo, but the archetype of what LaMelo can become, the heliocentric pick and roll over and over playmaker, triple threat or triple double threat.
Yeah.
His top end is I'm not comparing him to these guys, but the same profile. His top end potential is a Luka Doncic, is a James Harden. Just you can run your entire offense through him the entire game. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, agree. And I think with this draft in particular, like, you're going to be take chances. There's a lot of those guys where you're going to be like, all right, we got to look at the upside. And if we think the upside is a perennial all-star, we kind of have to take him. We have to take that chance because, like I said, this draft is so all over the place, right? There's like we talked, like our boards are different. Like it's vastly different. Like everyone's gonna have different boards. Everything's gonna be all over the place. So you might just have to be like, all right, if we think LaMelo can be that dude, like where he's a 25 and 10 guy, we gotta take him, right?
Yeah. Well, and Rozier, like I said, he's coming off a career year shooting the ball. He's only got 2 more years on his deal at a fairly manageable.
And Devontae Graham's a restricted free agent next year, right?
And that's right. So Devontae Graham's a restricted free agent. The Hornets will probably try and extend him as soon as they can. Will Devontae take like a 4 years, 44, or will he bet on himself, play out the contract, and then see what he's worth on the open market? I don't know the answer to that question, but it's gonna be fascinating to see what happens.
Yeah, they're like I said, they're in that Knicks mold where at this they just got to get talent.
Right,
they got to get talent. Right, they lose Kemba last year, and obviously that's their franchise player, right? So at this point,
I lost Cam Newton and Kemba in the same year, man.
Oh man, that's tough, man. That's tough. I know it's tough losing Cam, but you guys, Carolina's, you got some building blocks. You guys will be fine,
That's definitely another conversation for another day. But we're rebuilding quicker than I thought. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, for sure. It's better than what my New York teams are doing. So I don't know what my New York teams are doing at some point. I like to think I'm high with what the Knicks are doing, but I've been hurt so many times that we could be talking about this in 2 years, how we have a new GM and all this stuff. So and the Giants. I don't want to talk about the Giants.
I'll leave the Hornets conversation at this. I think the Hornets have 3 things going for them right now that they have not had going for them in the past. Number 1, we're out of salary cap hell. Most of our contracts have either already expired or are expiring this season.
Platoon's almost gone.
One more year. Will be gone. We'll throw a party.
I was looking over the salary. I'm like, how much is he making? He's like, I think it's like 27 mil. Obviously, he's opting in. He's gonna opt. He's definitely opting in.
Yeah, breaking news. Nick Batum's gonna opt in.
Yes, I think John Hollinger was on The Athletic, and they're like guys who think of opting in, and he wrote a big thing about everybody he thinks is gonna opt in, opt out, and then like the team was like, yeah, he's opting in. That's it. Like he's not. He'd be lucky to get a contract next year, but. So done with that. So that's good.
Right. So we're out of salary cap hell. Number 1. Number 2, we finally have what seems to be a competent front office and a competent coaching staff with Kupchak and Borrego. And number 3, we have young assets and we have all our draft picks.
Exactly.
So I've been kind of harping on that. Those are the three great things the Hornets have going for them right now. We just need Mitch to continue to nail draft picks. We'll see if he can do it.
Yeah, for sure. Like I definitely like the way Charlotte looks right now. Like I think people were definitely sad when Kemba left and thought, all right, this franchise is doomed. But PJ Washington, Devontae Graham, what he did last year, you definitely got talent. And with the third pick, you find either Melo, Anthony Edwards, one of these guys, and develop them, and you could be on your way, right? And it's the East. It's the Eastern Conference,
exactly.
Right? You don't need to win you don't have to win 48 games like in the West and maybe be an 8 seed, right?
That's a great point.
38 games and you're a 7th, 8th.
You're in the mix.
You're in the mix, right? And that's all you need is to get in there and just get that experience with these young guys and we'll see. But Charlotte's definitely, I do like what they're doing. And all Kupchak and Jordan, definitely got things going there. I think better than what people are see. But definitely, this was fun, man. Leah, this was fun, man. I appreciate you coming on. This was a blast talking the draft to you. Definitely, I'm super happy that we were even able to connect. Finding you through, that crazy draft world that we have in Twitter. Able to connect and able to chop it up. So this was a lot of fun, man.
Man, I appreciate you very much having me on. I've told you off air, but you just do a great job kind of managing and controlling a show. So it's always a pleasure to chat with you. And if people want to check out my stuff, at Which Carolina on Twitter, WHICH Carolina, at Which Carolina on Twitter.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, he does. Lee is one of the best. I've learned so much from Lee. With all his takes that he posts on Twitter. You also do some articles, right? You wrote.
Yep, do a little bit of scouting report and writing, and I'll certainly write about the Hornets more as the season gets closer.
So catch Lee on Which Carolina, and he does tremendous stuff. So this was fun, man. Like I said, this was really fun. Happy to chop it up for this last hour or so, and talk draft. And like I said, it's almost here, man. It's almost here, right?
Can't wait. What you gonna do, man? You just gonna watch it and let it. You gonna watch it at the crib and hang?
I'm just gonna watch it. I was thinking about maybe doing a live stream with the guys over there. Maybe I'll do something like that. I don't know, because obviously my team always picks high, so I'm always ready to, in the beginning, anxious to see what my team does. But I don't know. I don't know. I think I'll probably just sit back and just see what the Knicks do, and try not to throw something at the TV. If they take someone that's that was supposed to be in the 40s and they take them at 8, but I'll probably sit back and just sit back and just enjoy the draft.
Just let it happen, enjoy it. Well, hey man, we'll have to link back up after the draft for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'll definitely be talking to you again, and we'll be doing some post draft stuff. So, but like I said, Lee, we're from Which Carolina. Tremendous. He does tremendous stuff. Please make sure to follow him. He's one of the best. Like I said, I've learned so much from him and all his stuff. So this was fun, Lee. Take care.
Thanks for having me, man.
Take care. And like I said, we're definitely going to be doing this again. All right. Thanks for listening, guys. And make sure to be safe, everything. And draft's coming soon, guys. All right. Take care, guys.